Today, I'm also announcing $100 million in new U.S. funding for humanitarian assistance in both Gaza and the West Bank. This money will support more than 1 million displaced and conflict-affected Palestinians, including emergency needs in Gaza.
I'm sorry. I know it's not funny. I can't help but laugh. Joining me now, Daniel Horowitz, host of the Conservative Review podcast. This is outstanding. Daniel, so let me see if I understand this right. In Gaza, they elected Hamas. Hamas is the government. We're going to give them $100 million and pretend like the government won't determine how that money is spent. Do I have that right, Daniel?
You know, it used to be the game with the moderate PLO in Judea, Samaria. So we said, we'll give it to them. Now that Hamas is full control of Gaza, there's nowhere to run or hide. But I guess somehow it will magically, like a cluster bomb, go out to the poor and the needy, and Hamas's war effort won't gobble it up. But then again, Jesse, we're funding, and you know this, your time in the Middle East, we're funding Hezbollah in Lebanon. I'm sorry, it's the Lebanese armed forces, but Hezbollah doesn't get any of it. We're funding their intel. We're funding them with weaponry, howitzers, Abrams tanks, you name it, even aircraft. And we're also serving as the Shiite Air Force in Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria. We now have 1,000 troops in Syria doing what only Allah knows what we're doing there, pretty much saving Hezbollah from the Sunni insurgency. There's some bad reports right now that there was a drone attack on them. They're just sitting ducks there, killed. The point, Jesse, is this: the America First approach that is also the most pro-Israel and the most minimalist is to stop funding Israel's enemies in the Middle East, stop putting our soldiers in Syria that serve as collateral damage and get in the way of Israeli airstrikes in Syria when they need to do them, and focus on our own damn border and visa system.
Daniel, let me ask a question that's obviously going to be an uncomfortable one, but it's something I think about a lot. I guess I'm probably more of a barbarian type. Did Israel make a mistake allowing any separate population at all in the beginning? I understand those are dicey, complicated times, but it's crazy to me, this idea of half conquest the West seems to love. Oh, we'll take a place, but we won't really take the whole thing. Or we'll just take it a little bit. Well, we'll let you hang around a little bit, and look how it ends. It's crazy to me.
Jesse, that is a very disturbing question, because I mean, what did we witness? The slaughter of 1,400 Jews in the worst way imaginable. So this was always what they wanted to prevent, and it happened. So I thought at a minimum, they'd come in there, blow up all the tunnels, all the infrastructure and everything, and you got to do what you got to do. It's still stalled out. Not only can't they do anything, but even if they do nothing, now they have to own Hamas's rockets against their own people. So, you know, Israel committed suicide a long time ago. We know that, culminating really with Oslo and the subsequent things after 1993, 1994. You don't pet snakes. You don't bring them into your civilization. This was never about land. It was always about killing Jews. It was obvious to anyone. To be fair, like we're seeing now, they can't move an inch without the entire world, including an American administration, getting on their case. So that is why they are where they are. There's no conspiracy theory. I hear some on the right are a little bit confused about this. Israel committed suicide over the years, and the Biden administration helped them along the way. And what I find disturbing, we have some allies, and I know you know what I'm talking about, Jesse, where some people claim to be the vanguards of Western civilization. We need Charlemagne. We need all out. Well, this is your Charlemagne moment. And they won't even allow Israel to just go after the infrastructure of Hamas. I mean, we know how this would have been dealt with in World War II with burning down Tokyo. They would have specifically targeted civilians to win the war. But no one was even calling on them to do that. It was just, look, we're going to have to do what we do. They hide their stuff in civilian areas. That's on them. It's not on us. We can't have our people slaughtered. They haven't even stopped the current attack. You have the rockets still going on. The infiltrations, they're still trying with that. They're still holding on to at least 200 hostages, including at least a dozen Americans. And the Biden administration is basically going over to Israel and saying, hey, we're good buddies with Iran and their proxies, so we have them on speed dial. Your northern border, it would be a shame to lose it. So you stay out of Gaza, we'll try to keep the Hezbollah off your back. That's the predicament they're in now. But the punchline is, if something like this cannot spawn like 5% of our effort with Tokyo, I'm not even talking about the atom bombs, just all the stuff we did, then we are lost. And this is not an Israel problem. This is all of us. That if we ever had the cartels do this to us, Del Rio, Tucson, Douglas, Arizona, come in, murder 1,400 people one day, if this is our attitude, but the civilians, we're done.
Well, the thing is, Daniel, it is our attitude. I was talking to a buddy of mine, somebody we both know about this, and he essentially said, hey, if this happened, to America, if this was 60,000 Americans, you wouldn't see this kind of response. And we were just going back and forth, and I told him, that's crazy, buddy, you're wrong. Yes, we would. It's hard for Americans to understand how truly hostile other Americans are to all freedom, not just Israel's, ours as well. If the cartels came in tomorrow and killed 20,000 Americans, half the American left would be on their side. Half of the others would fight for them.
No, exactly. I mean, this is the disturbing thing that I am seeing, the lack of resolve. You look throughout the world, if you take out American Christian conservatives, the entire world, just 12 days after this massacre, sides with Hamas. The Gaza civilians is the new Ukraine, BLM, January 6th COVID. That is the new thing. It's not Israel, because you're not even hearing that anymore. And, that's what scares me, the lack of resolve. And Jesse, it's not just what happened in Israel. It's that simultaneously as that occurred, before Israel even announced what they were going to do, they were still trying to get control of their territory. You had thousands of Muslim immigrants and others rampaging throughout every Western city, celebrating it. It wasn't even the typical stop the occupation. They didn't even do anything in Gaza yet. This was straight up celebrating the worst savagery we've seen in our lifetime. And that was not enough. I shudder to think what it's going to take to get that resolved.
Joining me now, Vince Everett Ellison. He is the author of the new book, Crime Inc. What a name. And it's not about the mafia, even though it's mafia-like tactics. Vince, what are you talking about, Crime Inc.? Who's Crime Inc.?
Oh, Jesse, thanks for having me. I'm going to tell your viewers something a little bit about me. I was born on a cotton plantation in Haven County, Tennessee. My father was a sharecropper. And the most violent crime, Ku Klux Klan faction in America was in Tennessee. And the Grand Wizard lived in Brownsville, where I grew up. So I know about the Democrat Party because the Ku Klux Klan was their military wing, as you know. And they've tried to kill me and chase me my whole life. And I've known they were a criminal organization. My father aspired and brought us out of poverty in the insurance industry. And I started working in a prison after college. And I saw that we had not overcome. And when I asked the black intelligentsia why all these young black men were being locked up, they said, oh, evil, rich, white Republicans hate black people. So I went down to the ghetto and started a nonprofit. And when I got there, I saw something very interesting. I saw no evil, rich, white Republicans anywhere. You see a leprechaun or a unicorn before you saw one. But what I did see were a lot of black Democrats making a lot of money off the chaos. And my first book was about them. I called them the Iron Triangle. Most black preachers, most black politicians, and most black civil rights workers. And they were conduits for the rich white liberals and that lived in Manhattan and in LA, and for the poor blacks that they needed them to vote for. So this Iron Triangle made black people vote for the Democratic Party by hook or by crook. I mean, they bribe them, intimidate them, ballot harvesting, souls to the polls, you name it, they did it. And that was my first book. And Book Authority gave it like in the top 100 of one of the best political books of all time. Then I wrote 25 Lies, 25 of the Democratic Party most damnable, seductive lies. And then now I've written Crime Inc. So your viewers can go to VinceELlison.com. That's VinceELlison.com, and they can view all of my books. But Crime Inc. explains how the Democratic Party is not just an evil institution. It's a criminal group. It's a criminal organization. They're no longer a cabal of ignorant, violent racists like they used to be before the 60s. Now the Marxists have jumped from the civil rights movement, and they've jumped into the Democratic Party, and they took it over in 1972. And they've turned it into the most sophisticated crime organization in the world. They make their money from hits, just like the mafia. Planned Parenthood kills babies for a living. The Democratic Party gave them over $500 million last year to kill people. And then they make money from killing people, and they give money to the Democratic Party. They groom children at an early age, just like the mafia and the triads and the Crips and Bloods. Same thing, except they use the public educational system to do it. They traffic across the border. They and the cartels work hand in glove. They won't seal the border because they make money from the K Street lawyers that the cartels give money to, and these K Street lawyers then give the Democratic Party campaign contributions. This is how Crime Inc. is working. It tells the American people how the Democratic Party is a criminal organization, how they humiliate black people, how they demoralize people, how they beat people down, how they're an evil institution, a cabal of murderers, liars, psychopaths, and anti-Christian bigots, and why we got to run them out in 2024.
How you can explain this Marxist takeover of the civil rights movement, because you're 1,000% right on this, and a lot of people don't realize that at all. They think whenever you mention civil rights movement, for most Americans, they're thinking Martin Luther King Jr. and just fighting for equality, and obviously those things took place, but they don't realize that those dirty freaking Soviets got involved in that. They saw an opportunity and they dug in, and they really, really thrived in spreading Marxism in America through the civil rights movement.
Yes, they did. Yeah, the first chapter of my book explains how, like the mafia and the triads and MS-13, today's Democratic Party has a foreign influence. It started over in a foreign country, started in the Soviet Union, actually. So just like the mafia started in Italy, the MS-13 is from South America, the triads are from Asia. Today's Democratic Party is straight out of Moscow. I show how after the Montgomery bus boycott, Martin Luther King Jr. was actually recruited by Bayard Rustin, who was a communist, and he introduced him to Stanley Levison, who was the #1 communist in America. And Stanley Levison bankrolled the whole civil rights movement and the SELC from Moscow. Matter of fact, he and Clarence Jones, 2 communists, wrote the I Have a Dream speech. In the I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King Jr. said something that I heard 1,000 times, but this time I heard it in 2018. I heard this I Have a Dream speech, and I heard him say something that really rocked my world. He said, 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro is still not free. That was a lie. I was born free. My freedom is a gift from God. Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence that we were born free, that our freedoms transcend the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and law. It's a God-given thing to us. Martin Luther King Jr. said that it comes from government. That I Have a Dream speech turned the Declaration of Independence on his head. 5 times in that speech, he said, we were not free. And the refrain of it, at the end of it, he said, on some certain day, we'll be free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. And we teach our children that speech, that we are not free here in America, when that is an absolute lie, because according to our Declaration of Independence, we were born free. Our freedom is irrevocable, non-transferable, and unsellable. So these guys in the civil rights movement then jumped from the civil rights movement to the Democratic Party in 1972. They took it over, and the Democratic Party became a Marxist organization ever since then.
You sit around watching the news long enough, you'll feel completely helpless because you can't do anything about it. But you can, just not in the way you think. You see, you have a community, you have a town, you have a county, you have a state, and you can win these things back with effort. The communists took these things from you because they cared enough to try. If we care enough to try, we can take them back. And the man who is the tip of the spear, he is the one leading this effort everywhere he can. We can't clone him. Scott Pressler, he's going to join us right now. And first, he's going to tell us what happened down in Louisiana except for good Cajun food. Scott?
Well, first, you're exactly right, Jesse. Look, what's happening in Ukraine is awful, but it's a distraction. What's happening in Israel is awful. The speakership, that we don't have a Speaker of the House, all of these things are meant to divert our attention. And the thing that is most important right now is focusing on the November elections on Tuesday, November 7th. And as you mentioned, Jesse, I've got good news, because what we've been working on at Early Vote Action since the beginning of this year came to fruition on Saturday, October 14th. We elected Governor-elect Jeff Landry in the state of Louisiana, where they just had a 2-time Democrat governor. And if anybody knows anything about Louisiana, they have a jungle primary system. We had 15 candidates running, and Jeff Landry received over 51% of the vote outright on October 14th. That means that there's no runoff for the gubernatorial election. He is elected as governor. And that is exciting news, and it's giving us momentum going into this November's election.
Speak to us about this Louisiana place, Scott, because many people aren't that familiar with the politics there. When they think about it, they're thinking Deep South should be red anyway. Why wasn't it red before?
Well, I hate to say it, sometimes Republicans, we fight our own, and they did have a bitter primary that a lot of people who candidate didn't win. They did not vote for that general Republican candidate in the runoff in 2017. And the Democrat was able to win by 40,000 votes. So I hate to say it, the Democrats, while I don't respect their policies, I think their policies are reckless and dangerous for our country. I do respect that the Democrats at the end of the day coalesce together and will vote blue no matter who to get their candidates across the finish line. Now, luckily, we weren't in that situation with Jeff Landry. He is an attorney general that has fought against the Biden administration. And it's clear that our policies as Republicans and conservatives got him across the finish line. But one thing that I do want to point out, Jesse, is Caddo Parish in Shreveport, Louisiana is majority Black. And that parish voted for Jeff Landry on Saturday, October 14th. So minorities are coming over to the Republican Party. They realize how disastrous the Biden administration has been for our country.
Scott, explain how normal people, before we move on to other things they need to get involved in now, not in 2024 now, but how do normal people begin to engage locally, Scott? What's step one? There are a million people watching right now who want to get involved. They want to do something. No one's giving them something right in front of their face to do. What do?
It's as simple as little things like talking to your neighbors. You know, I'm here in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, in Butler County, Pennsylvania, and actually I'm in Mike Kelly's congressional district. Mike Kelly has been asked by his constituency, the members that voted for him, to vote for Jim Jordan. And yesterday he did not do such a thing. And today he announced support for Boehner as speaker. And a lot of people are really angry. They're irate. And we have local elections, not only for the Supreme Court statewide in Pennsylvania, but we have city council elections in Slippery Rock. And it's a very small, tight-knit community. It's as simple as talking to your neighbors and saying, hey, are you voting this November? Are you registered to vote? Because the deadline here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is on Monday, October 23rd. Do you have a plan to vote? Do you need a ride to the polls? Do you need a mail-in ballot? It's little things like even show support for your favorite candidate while going to the grocery store, to the supermarket, but having those discussions, because clearly everybody is angry, but nobody is offering an opportunity to turn that anger into positive action. And that's why I'm here, because I want to make sure that we're directing it into actual change.
Scott, I'm sure everybody is well aware there's a big presidential election coming in 2024, but there are critical elections happening this year: New Jersey, Kentucky, Mississippi, Virginia, Pennsylvania. Could you please explain to people that there are many battles to fight before 2024 ever gets here?
Well, you know, Jesse, I'm a little disappointed. Like, I first want to say I understand how people are feeling right now, that they're seeing Republicans not fight for our values, not vote for a Speaker of the House. And since so many people are frustrated that they're willing to just say, I'm only voting for President Trump, or I'm only voting for Governor DeSantis, whatever, I don't care. But guys, don't you realize that if you want to elect a Republican president next year, that president is going to need a Congress, is going to need a Senate and a House that he or she can work with in order to actually govern and legislate. So we need to be mindful of voting for Republicans to set the stage to win in 2024 and then be able to govern. Kentucky, Daniel Cameron's running for governor. Mitch McConnell's health is not doing great. We wish him well. I wish him a long, healthy life. But if he is forced to retire, the Democrat governor that's running to be reelected, who right now is in a position to probably be reelected, would be the person to appoint McConnell's replacement. That Democrat has already said he won't follow the law. So to anybody that cares about 2024, Kentucky is consequential. Electing Daniel Cameron as governor is consequential. Now, look, I live in Virginia. I'm currently in Pennsylvania, but I'll tell you, I voted early in person. I voted early in person because I know that I'm not going to be home on election day, and I want my vote to count and to be locked in for Republicans. In Virginia, if we pick up 2 state Senate seats, Governor Glenn Youngkin, and a state that has been blue since 2008, will have an entirely Republican legislature, and we'll be able to govern as Republicans and conservatives in Virginia, which, by the way, will set the stage to elect a Republican president in Virginia in 2024. And if people are upset in New Jersey with Democratic Governor Murphy, well, there is no better opportunity to have a repudiation of Democrat policies with the governor and with Senator Bob Menendez, who has been indicted allegedly for bribery. There is no better time for Republicans to be elected into office in the state of New Jersey. Regardless, I'm making an appeal to everybody right now watching Jesse's show. If you care about our country, I'm asking you, I'm begging, I'm pleading, do everything you can to help make sure that Republicans are successful top to bottom, from statewide offices like Judge Carolyn Carluccio in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to even city council races here in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. We need to show that America is standing united against what Joe Biden is doing right now, because otherwise the Democrats are going to be emboldened. Otherwise, the Democrats are going to say, look, the American people, they're happy with the border that's insecure. They're happy with Hamas attacking Israel. They're happy with Putin invading Ukraine. They're happy with jobs going overseas to China. They're happy with the inflation and gas prices and food prices that are unaffordable for working class America. Don't reward the Democrats by staying home. Make a plan to vote in Kentucky, in New Jersey, in Virginia, in Mississippi, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in New York. Make a plan to vote on Tuesday, November 7th, and let's show people that we are united as a family.
Now, I was always too dumb to ever get on a college campus, but you actually got on one. Is that where all this stems from? Is it earlier? Is it parents? What is it?
You know, I think that universities definitely have an agenda with students. It's pretty obvious when you're in school, and it's pretty obvious when you're watching school from the outside. You know, you can see kids go into a class 30 by 30 and come out completely radicalized to the left's agenda. It's not really, they're not hiding it. And I think that culture is influenced by this, absolutely. I think that it's coming from the bottom with students in universities, but it's also coming from the institutions and the big money that are making it that way, from big institutions in country music to big universities that are really responsible for everything we're seeing with these kids.
Why the institutional capture for them, especially when it comes to things like country music or NASCAR, which I don't even like, but I've always liked, the patriotic part of it. These institutions that have been traditionally ours, we lost them. And that's weird. Are these big institutions just hiring a bunch of commie nerds out of Harvard? Is that the problem?
Kind of. I mean, I think it's always you follow the money, you're going to get the answer. I think that it's definitely agenda that's well funded. But I also think that we have culture that used to be ours, and I say ours generically because, you know, I definitely identified with country music, and I think a lot of other people with the same values do too. But I think we're seeing these industries, NASCAR, country, Budweiser, you know, weaponized against us because they tend to breed a culture of independent thinking. And that's really what it is. If you're critically thinking, if you're actually individually thinking, you know, so much that goes on at universities is under the veil of being an individual, when really the approach to openness and being open to everything, you're not discerning about anything, which is why these kids are so malleable, and they come out the other side very different than they went in. And I think parents are chastised for being helicopter parents. I remember that phrase kind of came up as I was growing up, and parents just, they didn't want to infringe on their kids' privacy. They didn't want to, they were so worried about these things that weren't a conversation before social media, before cell phones. And so you have these parents that are worried about being helicopter parents. They don't want to seem overbearing. It's been so demonized to be overbearing. And then you have the kids as a result of that. And it's the reason I say it's institutional is because I don't think it's an accident.
Yeah, I don't think it's an accident either. You know what? This is going to sound like a weird question, but I am curious. Speaking of parents, there are parents out there undoubtedly watching right now who have a very talented young lady or young man who wants to get into the music business, and they're worried about the direction it goes. You're somebody who's done it. You're making your way through it. Do you have any words of advice or even caution for them as they push their little one out into what can be a very ugly industry?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can be a very ugly industry. I think that my biggest caution would be the things that you're already worried about are there. These are things that you should be fearful of. You're not overreacting or over worried for no reason. What I will say is the way that my parents raised me with the values that I have, between going off to university and not being swayed. And it's, like I said, it's on purpose. I mean, the college I went to separated the parents and the kids in orientation. And they said, you're raised up to a certain point by your parents, but now, we're going to tell you, we're going to teach you a new way to think, or you should be open to new things. I mean, they do it from day one. And so the things that you're worried about at university, the things that you would inherently be worried about in the entertainment industry, as long as your kids have really steadfast values, they're not embarrassed of them, they're not worried about sticking out for themselves. There are so many paths of independent music now where you don't have to sign on with any version of an institution. You don't have to be signed to a label. Everything is so really, you can use social media to your benefit. You can use all of these things in order to not sacrifice your values. And so I don't think it's for lack of a better term, a moral death sentence to go into the music industry. While you are asked to sacrifice things, you don't have to. And so I like to tell people that, you can still do the things that you love and promote the things that you believe in. There's really not a limiting factor to that, as I think there once was. And I think it's inspiring for other people. And so I would say, go forth cautiously and be a part of your kid's life. Ask a lot of questions. I know my parents have been a huge part of my life, and I've been really grateful for it because, I have a contract and I make sure that they look at it, or I make sure that we get someone to look at it. These things it's good to have a second set of eyes. And I think this generation has pushed parents out a little. And I would just say, keep parents in. I'm a big advocate for keeping parents in.
For too long, we've been led to believe that communism is a thing of the past. But the truth is, communism is alive. It's here, and it's infiltrating every aspect of American life. Introducing the Anti-Communist Manifesto by Jesse Kelly, the practical guide for patriots ready to defend our nation from its most dangerous enemy. Discover the shocking extent of communist infiltration in our education system, their alliance with American corporations, and the twisted truth behind environmentalism. This eye-opening book exposes the true face of communism and empowers you to fight back. Join the fight for freedom. Pre-order your copy of the Anti-Communist Manifesto today by going to jessekellybook.com.